Hey folks, Coach Glenn here. Today, I'm going to ask you, why are you eating bread? Now, I'm not a bread hater. In fact, growing up, I loved bread. I was very fortunate to spend many years in Germany when my father was in the armed forces. And if you've ever traveled overseas and you've experienced the bread in Europe, it is much tastier and healthier than it is in North America. As soon as I came back, I found I couldn't eat the bread. My skin broke out, got very bloated, gassy. And a lot of it is because bread in North America, unfortunately, there's lots of chemicals. Most people might not be allergic to the gluten or have gluten sensitivities that's in the bread in North America. It's the glyphosate in the Roundup that they spray the fields with. Usually the body's rejecting that poison and those harsh chemicals. And so that's one reason why I'm going to ask you why you're eating bread. And again, I'm not a bread hater. I love bread. Like I said, growing up, I would have a sandwich every day. I loved having peanut butter and banana on bread. Just loved it. That was one of my favorite snacks as a kid. But the reason why I'm asking you this is because right now, for a lot of people, as we turn into the new year, a lot of people decide, you know what, this is a great time of year for me to have some goals or resolutions, or to just improve my health in general, because I've got the support of people around me. Because a lot of people this time of year, they're making some health changes. And to be quite honest, folks, unless you are extremely active, starch is not your friend. You don't need it. Now, if you are in your teens or 20s and you're playing a lot of sports and you're extremely active, or say if you work on a farm and you're manually doing work all day, then yes, getting away with eating starch with several of your meals, fine, perfect. But for most of us that sit for a large portion of our day, and for a lot of us that just aren't as active as we used to be, we don't need the starch. Remember, I mentioned in a previous video, carbs are your body's simplest and easiest form of fuel. However, just like gas for a car, I'm pointing this way because my car is parked out front, but if your car is not moving, it's not burning the gas or the fuel. So it's the same thing. If your body, if you're sitting for 10, 12, 14 hours a day, whether it's on your commute to work, sitting at work, you get home and you sit and you eat dinner, you get home and you sit in front of the television, you sit in front of your screen and you're scrolling. If you're sitting a lot and you're not doing a lot of consistent activity, walking, biking, hiking, lifting weights, swimming, doing active things, your body does not need a ton of starch. In fact, I would challenge you that you don't need starch at all, because lots of starch, including grains, contain lectins, which are anti-nutrients, which cause horrendous inflammation in the body. And most people continue to throw starch and grains down their throat, and they don't understand why their joints ache, or their fingers are puffy, or their ankles are swollen, or just in general they don't feel well. I guarantee if you would limit or reduce the amount of starch you're eating, specifically grains, then you're going to find that you're going to feel better, you're going to have more energy, and overall you're just going to look better. So again, bread is not the enemy. It's starch for the most part. So your breads, your rices, your bread, pasta, rice, grains, cereals, potatoes, a lot of those things that you typically wouldn't even think about, they take much longer in the body to break down, digest, absorb, give you the nutrients, and they're very heavy. And for a lot of people, if you are having a lot of starch in your lunch, and then you wonder why, say if you're eating lunch around noon, if around 1 or 2 o'clock you're getting the head nod and your eyes feel heavy, it's because you've had a ton of starch, which again, all carbohydrates break down into sugar. But as soon as if you have veggies and fruit and you have pieces of bread for lunch, or rice, or whatever your starch of choice is, there's so much carbohydrates being broken down into simple sugar, your blood sugar elevates and spikes, your insulin elevates and spikes, and you feel really sleepy really quickly. So what I would recommend, folks, is to your first meal of the day, try and avoid having carbohydrates at all, especially starch. And then, unless you're more active in the morning, maybe you are someone that really enjoys doing your morning exercise, and you can jump out of bed and put on your running shoes or your workout gear and do your intense workout first thing, or your moderate workout first thing. Great. Then you're probably going to want a little bit of carbohydrates to refuel after that workout. But for most people, they typically work out a little bit later in the day, later morning, early afternoon, or evening. And I would encourage you to wait until later in the day to consume your starch if you're going to have any. So if you do feel that craving, like for instance, all of us enjoy that smell of fresh bread being baked. I know I do when I lived in Germany, because it was baked fresh every day, and there was a bakery right near my house. And obviously you got that, you smell it and you get that craving. And one thing I will say, if that's you, luckily for me, I have the willpower and discipline that I don't need that. I don't need distractions anymore. But if you're someone that doesn't have that willpower, and say your spouse is cooking, some baked goods or bread or whatever, and you know that based on the health plan you're creating for yourself, that I don't need this right now. I'm gonna pick my spots. Go for a walk. Go to a quiet room and do some deep breathing. Drink some water. Find something to distract yourself with that won't allow you to break that discipline and break that willpower, so you can maintain your goal of, okay, you know what, I'm gonna reduce my carbohydrates, or I'm gonna limit my starch to my dinner or my supper only. And so you got to find something that's going to work for you, that's going to distract you from that smell or that craving of wanting to have a piece of bread or have some starch if you get home from work and you're just you're so starving that you can't even stand it. Usually most of us rush for carbs when that happens, and typically when you have those cravings, folks, it's because your body hasn't had enough protein or adequate protein, and until it gets the amount that your body needs at that time, you're going to crave carbohydrates and you're going to keep eating. So one thing I will share with you is eat more protein and you'll have less cravings, and you'll probably consume less sugar, less starch, which is overall a good thing. But what you have to figure out is how important is it to you, your goals. So if you say to yourself, okay, in 2023, enough's enough, I am finally going to have the body I want, or I'm going to have the energy I want, or I'm going to look great in my bathing suit when I'm at the beach this summer. Whatever that is for you, you've got to have the willpower that when you see a piece of bread or some sugar or something that your body might be craving, you've got to have the willpower to say, okay, based on the goal that I have, if I eat this, is it going to make me look and feel better, or is it just serving a bad habit? And if it's serving an unsupportive bad habit, then you know that it's not moving you closer to your goal. It's stopping you, or it's pulling you back the other way. So that is a very good way to do a self-check or a self-audit and say, okay, whoa, based on the goals that I have for myself, is this supportive and is it serving me? And if it isn't, then you got to find a distraction, like I mentioned before, like go and move, read a book, go into a quiet room and do some deep breathing. Find yourself a distraction, and it'll help the subside your cravings until you have enough discipline and willpower to not even have to worry about a distraction. What I do, folks, is I use starch as my weekly reward. And I know that potato chips aren't healthy. I know there's many other healthier options you can eat when it comes to junk. But like most of you, I'm human and I have my faults as well. And typically for me, Saturday night, movie night at our house, and I love my chips. So if it was just me on my own and say my family was eating popcorn, I would still crush a bag of chips by myself. And that for me is my, okay, you know what? I know this isn't good for me. It's not going to support my goals moving forward, but I allow myself a little bit of flexibility because it's my one day of the week where I have one meal while I'm watching a movie or watching the game that I don't even let it bother me. I don't feel guilt. I don't feel shame, because I know that on Saturday evening, I'm going to enjoy a bag of chips and I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about if I worked out intensely that day or how I'm going to burn it off the next day. Those thoughts don't even cross my mind, because the other 6 days of the week, 99% of the time, I don't touch potato chips. So that's why I reward myself with potato chips on Saturday night. So what you may have to do is figure out what reward or cheat meal are you going to allow yourself. Like maybe if you're a bread lover like me, maybe on Saturdays is the day that you're going to crush bread, and the other 6 days of the week, you don't touch it. Or you got to figure out what is the cheat meal for you, or what's the cheat starch for you that is okay for you to have once a week or one meal a week. So that is it for today, folks. I would encourage you, if you find this information useful or interesting and you want to dive deeper into your health challenges and how I can support you, click on the link below to book a 30-minute health call or health audit with me, and we will go through and we'll diagnose the areas of your health that maybe you're looking to improve on. We'll figure out a game plan, and then we'll get you going on the right track. Have a great rest of your week. Coach Glenn out, and we'll talk to you again soon.